Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Crisis Management and Business Continuity, our first webinar in a series of the COVID-19 webinars. Thank you for taking your time out and joining us today here. My name is Adina Basic. I'm the Director General here at London Management Centre. I will be joined today by Rob Hoblin, International Leadership and Management Trainer, who will be talking to you about leading through crisis and developing strategies for business continuity. Also, we will hear from James Hudson, our Senior Trainer, Training and Development Specialist, who will be talking about managing and communicating with remote teams. Just before I pass on to our specialist to talk about the subject, I will just mention to you as our attendees, we have enabled our Q&A section or feature on this platform. So if you move your mouse or click your screen, at the bottom, you will see a Q&A icon. In there, you can pop in your questions if you want to ask our panelists. And at the end of this webinar, we will take some time to answer some of these questions. And just in case, if you miss out anything during the webinar, please don't worry about it, because we will be recording the entire webinar and the recording will be posted on our website later. So now I would like to hand over to Rob. Rob, here you are.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Rob Hoblin, and I'm just going to talk through leading through crisis and some strategies for business resilience. Just a quick background check for you. I was 30 years in policing in the UK in a national force. My last 10 years was as a chief superintendent, and I was in charge of all things operational. I was in charge of all things strategic, and we did lots of testing, lots of exercising during my time in the police force. So I will talk about some of those experiences as I go through my 20 minutes. So the first thing then, let's have a poll to start with. So Maria, if we can have a poll, please. First question for our audience. And our first question is, what would be your number one concern when dealing with your team through a crisis such as that which COVID-19 is presenting us? First one, shareholder profits. Second one, operational delivery. Third one, health and well-being of your team. And the fourth one, the growth of your business. If I could get you to answer one of those answers, please, and we'll see what your number one concerns are. So very highly in amongst this, and really good to see and really good to hear. It's the health and well-being of your team, which has a huge lead over anything else. And obviously just falling in behind that is operational delivery. So I know that James Hudson, who follows me, will be talking about working with your team. So thank you very much for that. And we will just take that forward. So in terms of the poll, the next thing I'm going to look at is the leading versus managing at the strategic level within an organization, and just see what those comparators are for doing those things. So in terms of doing that, then we know that we're going through chaos, we know we're going through disruption, and leaders need to lead and manage their teams through this complexity of change. And as I call it, this is going to be our new normality. We have to address the urgent needs of the present. And for me, that's a management kind of role. As the leader, we need to be guiding our staff to the best possible outcomes. And we do this through what's known as the arc of time. What we don't know is what that arc of time is going to be looking like. Is it going to be another few months? Is it going to be till the end of the year? We really don't know. But we need to focus on the needs of our team. We need to be looking as leaders beyond the immediate, and we need to be thinking about what obstacles are we going to be coming over. Is it 3, 4, 5, 6 obstacles over these next months and through this arc of time? The Harvard Business Review, they've done some research on leaders in a crisis over a 20-year period, and they've come up with what they call 4 mistakes that are made by leaders during a crisis. The first of these mistakes is taking a narrow view. What do we mean by that? what we're saying here is the human brain is programmed to narrow its focus when it is threatened. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism, and it's designed for self-protection. However, the trap is that our field of vision becomes restricted to the immediate foreground. As leaders, what we need to do is intentionally pull back, open our mental aperture, and take in the midground and the background. What we call this is meta leadership. So we take a broad and a holistic view of both the challenges and the opportunities. I call this the helicopter view. So we get into the helicopter, we get the pilot to take us up as high as we can, and we have a look across the whole field, the whole spectrum, and we focus on meta leadership issues. So that's the first thing. We need to stop taking the narrow view, take the much wider aperture view, and see what's going on around us. The next thing, the next mistake that we think leaders make is they get seduced by managing. And I have a huge difference in the terms here. Leadership, I think, is about dealing with people. Management is about dealing with stuff and numbers. However, as managers, if we've come through the same organization, maybe the same industry, we get nothing but a good thrill when we come across a crisis. The trap is that we return to our operational comfort zone. Our adrenaline spikes, we make decisions, we love getting in the thick of the action, and we're getting in there and we're doing stuff and we think we've got some really good tangible value. However, it's a bit like a sugar rush, a bit like a sugar high. Once it's been done, we then kind of fall away. What we need our leaders to do is take the longer view. Let your other team leaders do that sugar rush stuff. Let them make those decisions for dealing with today and dealing with the now. You need to be there taking that helicopter view and a longer view over time. When might this COVID-19 finish? When might it end? How long are we talking? We need to be thinking about what the experts are saying in our respective countries. The third mistake that we make as leaders during a crisis is that we over-centralize the response. Risk is all around us during a crisis. Why? Because of what I call the VUCA elements. VUCA, V-U-C-A. VUCA is all about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. The failing of some leaders is what we try to do during the period of VUCA is we try to take control of everything. All decisions have to come to the top. We need to be in control of every single thing. And what happens there is that we actually stifle getting things done at the operational level, and we stifle getting things done today because we've got all this decision-making process coming to the very top and then coming all the way back down again. What we're losing here is effect, and we're losing time. The fourth mistake that we make, and I must admit, having seen that poll, I don't think that our audience here will be making this mistake, but forgetting the human factors. It may seem obvious that a crisis is a crisis because it affects people. COVID-19 really has been affecting people. However, leaders can become trapped by focusing on the daily metrics. Things like share price, revenue, costs. Of course, these are important, but the outcome of the coordinated efforts of people, that's who do it. Our organizations exist in order to accomplish something together. These things are not done individually. We have to do this as a team. So our effort is to unite our staff. And as I said, it's really pleasing to see that 85% result from the poll that we got today. And I've just come away from an organization in the last few minutes where they have this initiative called Family Must Come First. Within the decision-making process, family must come first. So strategic resilience then, what does that mean? And what does it mean for everybody in our audience? Well, here's a definition from the Deloitte organization, and this was just last year. They published this in their resilience document. If organizations don't invest appropriately to test and challenge their mindset around resilience, they are in danger of being ill-prepared for crisis coming their way. Leaders need to discuss what the overall aim is for the organization, especially during this period of crisis. What capacity do we have at the C-suite level, at the top level? Can we make decisions 24/7, 7 days a week? Probably not. So we need to make sure we build capacity in. How do we achieve things whilst we're dealing with the huge impact that COVID-19 is having on us? It's making things extra difficult. Why? Because guess what? We're all working from home. We're not having those shoulder to shoulder meetings where we can look people in the eye. We can see the non-verbal contributions that people are making. We're having to look through camera lenses and just make decisions based on that. We've done exercising. Most of our organizations have done exercising. I came from an organization that 10 years ago, we exercised for pandemic flu. Lessons learned, all parked away. Where are they now? Never to be seen again. Why? Costs. Always going to be costs. We have to pay for things to be ready for the future. And because of costs, we thought it won't happen. It's not going to be a huge risk. Let's just park it and leave it. And it has come back in the UK, I can talk about, it has come back to bite us. So we should be prepared for the now and the then. We need to be thinking of vision for the future. Just in terms of operational resilience, just move into that next layer down. KPMG, another big firm here in the UK, last year, they came out with this particular definition about operational resilience. What they said was that firms which are perceived to be operationally resilient are likely to derive both the longer term competitive advantage and also mitigate strategic and operating costs infrastructure by taking a more holistic approach. Back to my helicopter, back to that periphery visionary stuff. That's what we mean by holistic, taking a much wider approach here. And there's lots of threats around us. We have a UK National Threat Index, and we've got things in there like cyber, IT, third-party supplier failure, natural hazards, fire, floods, severe weather. Oh, and guess what? The #1 threat for the last 10 years has been pandemic flu. So to deal with this, it's got to be driven from the board downwards. What is the commercial imperative of operational resilience? So we need to be thinking of these things and take the operational imperatives forward in our thinking and cascade that down through our organization. So let's have another poll, please. Maria, if you can put the next poll up. So what would be your first priority when making key strategic decisions during the COVID-19 crisis? Is it ensuring the information you receive is factually correct, complying with current company policy, building in viable contingencies as alternative options, or meeting the needs of the media? So I could get you to give us one answer and we'll see where the majority go on this one. Again, big majority here in terms of building in a viable contingency as an alternative option. Really good to see that. I'm going to visit that when we go to decision making, but this is where lots of organizations maybe fall away. They think plan A is the only plan to use, and actually they needed a plan B and a plan C and a plan D. So I'll come back to this contingency planning as we come through this. So leading through a crisis then. So what do we mean by leading through a crisis? Think of the qualities that you need as a leader. We've probably all read some fantastic leadership books, but as a leader, what is it that we need to be doing so that we can work exceptionally well? Here we have some key words. There must be probably 200 or 300 words on that particular picture there. And I'm sure you can pick out some really key words about who you think, or sorry, what you think will be the key traits of a leader. And probably recognize some of those in yourselves, perhaps. However, Gallup this year, so literally, I think it was February this year, Gallup did a survey of hundreds of organizations across the world. And what they asked in that survey was, what do employees need from their leaders during a crisis? Interestingly, some of those words were not on the picture I put previously. So one thing they said was they want their boss to be trustworthy. They have to be trustworthy. The second thing they asked for is they want their boss, their leader, to be compassionate. And I think that link back to that first poll where we talked about dealing with our staff first. You know, family must come first, staff must come first in this absolutely frenetic time of crisis. Another thing they said was we want our leaders to be stable. What we don't want is inconsistency. We've seen it in the UK, we've seen it from government level, we've seen some inconsistencies in terms of messaging. That is no good when we're in a time of crisis. We want to see a stable approach to decision making, to direction, and to taking the organization forward. And last but not least, believe it or not, they want to see the leaders showing that they are hopeful of a positive outcome. Whatever that outcome might look like, we have to be hopeful. If the big boss is hopeful, we're going to come through this positively. That will transcend right through the organization, and that's what will come out for it. I've also watched a webinar very recently by the London Business School, and the London Business School did a similar kind of survey, but it wasn't about the traits. It was more about things that leaders should be doing. And what they said was 4 key things came out of their survey. What we should be doing: regularly scheduled, consistent, frequent messaging. We're getting that from the UK government. Every day, 5 o'clock, 7 days a week, we're getting a government pitch from 10 Downing Street, and they're telling us over a 20-minute, 30-minute period what is happening, what the results are of COVID-19, and what the next steps are. So we're getting that consistency at government level. I would advocate we should be doing that at organisational level as well, perhaps following on from that 5 o'clock briefing. What they're also saying is we need to be realistic about the challenges. Yeah, really realistic about what they are, and explain what they are, and also explain how we're going to deal with those challenges. Interestingly, in the London Business School survey, they also use the word hopeful. We need to be hopeful in how the organisation will come through the other side. I even get emails now saying, Rob, hope to see you on the other side. I hope to see everybody on the other side too. That'd be really, really useful. And last but not least, and I love this phrase that came out from the London Business School, which was, provide a sense that we're all in this together. With our National Health Service here in the UK, that's the messaging that's coming through and through. We are all in this together, and treat this as a one team, right across government, right across all the different departments, all organisations. Some organisations going way out of their normal scope to deliver stuff on behalf of the UK, and I'm sure it's happening in other countries as well. So we're all in this together is a key message that is coming out. So decision making, just a few kind of things that are happening at the national level where decision making, in my view, it could be a little bit better. First thing we have is testing. Different countries have obviously had the COVID at different periods, and our testing regime, when, who, why, where, clarity was never there from the very beginning, and the media keep probing, keep asking questions. So we need to make sure that whatever it is that we're doing, testing is just an example, we need to have clarity. Kit and equipment, the issuing, for instance, to our National Health Service of protective kit and equipment, to our policing for kit and equipment, to our armed services of kit and equipment, again, there was inconsistency there. We actually ran out of it, and we had to go to places like Turkey to buy it in. But in the UK, perversely, we're selling kit and equipment abroad because our government wasn't buying it. So back to decision making, let's revisit that for next time, because there will be a next time, and how do we do that differently and better next time round. I can talk about policing, having come from a policing background. There were some guidelines given to how we police the public, bearing in mind that policing is the public and the public are the police in the UK. And I'm sure it's the same for other places. Each chief constable within England and Wales, and we have 43 different chief constables, interpreted the government guidelines differently. We had some embarrassing factors like drones going up and almost naming and shaming people who were walking places where they shouldn't have been walking. We had actually chief constables stopping doing road checks when road checks didn't need to be done. So there has to be consistency in how we follow guidelines. The next one was about protecting jobs. So the government in the UK had pools of money in different sets of pools of money, and the guidelines and the guidance, guess what? It was inconsistent. The money was available on paper, but even now, 2 or 3 months in, we still haven't given the right money to the right people. So we have to be absolutely clear, whatever guidance we are given in our decision making, that it is consistent. And last but not least, and I can wind back 10 years now, lessons learned from others. What lessons have we learned from those countries who are ahead of the curve from where we are? And really importantly for me, having been in a world where we used to do exercising at a national level, what have we learned? Where do we put those lessons? How do we find those lessons and bring them back out? And what actions did we take from those lessons? That for me is the big takeaway from all of this. Whatever we exercised, whenever it was, make sure we can reach back in and get those lessons learned. This is just a model that we use in policing. Our emergency services in the UK use it. And I'm not going to go right round the model, but whatever decision we make, if it's government, if it's emergency services, and I would say any business, any organization, central to your decision-making process is that we make sure we have the vision and the values of the organization central to that. I would actually add one more element into that central piece, and that's that family must come first. We put that into our decision-making process, things will happen a lot more easily. You will have your team on side, you'll have all your workers on side, and those decisions will come to fruition in the way that you wish. The other thing that we need to do is make sure we've got the right team with the right players in front of us. For instance, if it was football, we wouldn't have a football team with 11 goalkeepers. We wouldn't have a football team with 11 strikers. We wouldn't have a surgical team with 5 surgeons but no anaesthetist, or 5 anaesthetists and no surgeon. So we've got to have the right people in the right place with the right skills at the right time. That for me would then make sure you have got the right team in place for whatever it is that you're trying to do in your organization at any particular level. Our last poll, please, Maria, the third poll, if I can get our participants to participate in this. To what extent are your leaders communicating as often, as candidly, and as clearly and compassionately as you need them to? Are they not doing it at all? They're doing it somewhat but could do more, or they're doing it quite a bit and you are impressed. So if you could give me an answer from any of those 3, and I'd like to think the answer might be one that I like, but hey ho. The answer is, it's 50-50. Not where I thought this was going to go. So somewhat, but could do more. Again, lessons learned. We've not been through a COVID-19 before, so what are we learning from this? And it's good to see at least half of you are impressed with what your leaders are doing in terms of communicating. As always, communication, it's what bonds all of this together in my view, and there is always an area for improvement, an area for development. So thank you for participating in our polls. So just in terms of some key takeaways from today, and we can learn a lot more of any of these topics from the London Management Centre following this particular webinar, but the kind of takeaways I would like to think we've got from this very short session is we need to lead from the front and we need to let others manage. We cannot do it all. We also need to set our strategic and operational resilience and make sure we've got it set at the right levels. Don't forget the helicopter view at the strategic level. And the other thing is we need to make sure that we've got the required leadership traits in place. Not something you can build in overnight, but certainly something we can learn. And last but not least, we need to make sure that our decision making is consistent in times of crisis. I'm now going to hand you over to the inimitable James Hudson, who's now going to take you through managing communications with remote teams. Over to you, James.
Oh, thank you very much, Rob. Thank you for the wonderful introduction and for the very informative discussion and presentation. I'm just going to get my camera up and running so you can all see me. So good afternoon. It's an absolute delight to be speaking with you this afternoon, everyone. I am going to spend the next 20 minutes sharing with you my thoughts around managing and communicating with remote teams. These come from 18 years working within learning and development, and I also have remote teams myself. So I've been working remotely pre-COVID-19 and have teams that I work with that are based around the globe, in India, in the US, in Australia. So I have a lot of experience of managing people who are not even in the same country as I am. So over these 20 minutes, what I'd like to do is take you on a short walk down memory lane. We will then look at the 3 fundamental keys to managing and communicating with remote teams. And then we will leave you with 6 practical actions that you can take away from today's session. So I'm going to start things off with a short poll. So Maria, if we could get the first poll, if that would be fantastic. And this poll is describe your feelings right now of working from home due to lockdown. So I'm sure most of you are in lockdown. I think I read somewhere that 4.5 billion people around the globe right now are in lockdown. So how are you feeling about it? Just grab whichever one best suits, describes you. So I love autonomy and flexibility. I find the technology frustrating. It gives me time to concentrate and think. I miss the social interaction, or I keep getting distracted by my family. I know a lot of us have got our kids at home and are becoming homeschoolers at the moment. So just select which one is most applicable to you. And if we could get the results, Maria, once they're in. Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Thank you so much for your responses. So interestingly, 53% of you felt that you love the autonomy and flexibility of working from home. And I think that's definitely the case. We're given so much more self-direction and flexible to work on our own time and terms. 28% said, I miss the social interaction. And I'm going to come on to that in a moment, because that is a very, very important factor here, the social interaction. And then the third answer, the third highest, was getting time to concentrate and think. And I definitely think working from home enables us to do that. Marie, if we could clear that away, and I will continue on through the presentation. Thank you again for your responses there. So let's take a little walk down memory lane and look at how working from home has progressed over time. So we're going to start in the 1980s, because that was really when people began to have, and the technology became available for people to work from home. Now, believe it or not, I can remember the 1980s. My memories of the 1980s were of my dad, because my dad was a freelance computer programmer. He worked on the great big mainframes and created programs that now operate systems that are commonplace nowadays, like stock management, bookkeeping systems, etc. And he had a machine very, very similar to this. And my lasting memory was him writing a program. I think it was for Coca-Cola at the time, and it had 800 5.25-inch floppy disks, those little floppy disks. And I remember him having to label every single one of them and saying to me that when he gets to the mainframe computer, he had to put each one in order. Otherwise, the program wouldn't work correctly. So, of course, the technology wasn't great. Not many people could work from home. Then we got to the 2000s, and of course, the image there is of the dial-up, and many of you remember that dialing tone that we used to have with the internet. But the internet opened up the ability to work from home. We could now do it more. And then 2010s came along, and the technology really advanced massively in the 2010s. And the image I've got there is someone with a laptop on a beach, because we were sold this laptop lifestyle in the 2010s, that you could sit with your laptop and work anywhere from the world, and you could have this laptop lifestyle because the technology was there. It hasn't really changed much in the last 10 years. It's all been there for us. But interestingly, the number of people who worked from home rose exponentially throughout the 2010s. But equally, what rose exponentially was the rise of co-working hubs, co-working spaces, WeWork being one of the biggest well-known brands of them. So interestingly, everyone could work from home. The technology was there to work from home, but we chose to work in an office. People paid to actually get time in an office, that social interaction. And then, of course, my final image on this slide, the 2020s, we've just joined this decade, and COVID-19 is obviously the main thing that has happened so far. And now everybody is working from home, pretty much everyone around the world. And I think the main phrase to summarize the 2020s so far is that necessity is the mother of all innovation. And I definitely think necessity is called on us to innovate rapidly in these times. So if I move on through my slides, so managing highly effective remote teams. So the three fundamental keys that you must have in place in order to manage effective teams is you must have the right technology. technology is absolutely important, and I'll talk about that in a moment and some technology that you can use. Social, we've just talked about how people paid to work in an office because they missed the social interaction. To have a highly effective remote team, they need social interactivity. And the final element, and probably one of the crucial elements here, is the work itself. So the work itself must be work that can be done from home. That's fairly obvious. But also it's about how people understand that work. Are they clear? Are there clear goals, clear targets, clear measures? Is everyone clear about what they're accountable for and what they're responsible for? When we get all these three working correctly, we get highly effective remote teams. Technology plus social plus work equals highly effective remote teams. So let's explore technology, because technology is really, really important. In fact, IBM recently did some research whereby they split a team and got half of that team doing the exact same work, half the team to begin working from home, and the other half of the team to carry on working in the office, because they wanted to see which was more productive. Interestingly, after the first month or so, they ran some tests and they found that the teams that were working from home were actually 40% less productive working from home. So they scratched their heads and they thought, hang on a minute, we thought this was going to make people more productive working from home. And they wondered what it might be. But they carried on with the experiment, and within 3 months, the teams were equal in terms of their productivity. And after 6 months, those working from home were then 40% more effective and more productive than those working within the office. And they put the main thing down to the technological learning curve, because those working from home had to learn new technologies, new ways of working, find new routines in order to work effectively from home. And the technological learning curve slowed a lot of that productivity down to begin with, but as they got more used to the technology, they were able to work much more effectively from home. So let's have a quick look at some of this technology. So let's start by looking at communication technology. And this is where there are so many great forms of technology available for us to help us communicate. We've got Skype, which has been around for a very long time now. Really, Teams has overtaken Skype and is the newer version of Microsoft software, but it just enables that video communication one-on-one with people. You can do more people, but it tends to get a bit glitchy once you get more than about a one-on-one. Zoom, which of course we're on today, which is a fantastic platform and great. I can speak to up to 100 members of my team at once over Zoom. If Zoom is probably, there's been a lot of stuff around security issues with Zoom. So if you are concerned about that, Cisco systems do WebEx, which is deemed a more secure platform. It's just a little bit more clunky, less accessible than Zoom. Zoom's very easy to set up. You can set it up very quickly and can be set, and pretty much anyone can work their way around Zoom. I do wonder whether some of these security issues with Zoom are more to do with the fact that Zoom's stock price has shot up in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic and everyone working from home, and maybe their rivals are trying to steal some of their thunder and that kind of thing. And the middle image there is WhatsApp. So if you don't need video, WhatsApp is a great way to quickly send text messages to team members and to communicate over text, emojis, etc., etc. So that's communication. Let's look at collaboration, because of course collaboration is really, really key. That social interaction is something that we miss. And so some of these tools will help you to create some of that social interaction, because of course when you're in the office and you have a question or you need some help with something, you can just turn to the person next to you and ask a question. When you're at home, it's not quite as simple as that. So here's some technology you can use. So Slack is a great file sharing and sort of text, sort of to-do list type software. Office 365, so your Excel, PowerPoint, Word, all those great documents are within Office 365. So they're great for collaborating and SharePoint's within there. You've got Dropbox as well. So again, if you're in a corporate environment, most corporate environments will have Office 365. It's very professional, but it's a paid for thing. If you're not in an office environment and you're doing things on a budget, then Dropbox is a great alternative for sharing files between people. And then the final one on that slide is Yammer. So Yammer is actually offered as part of Office 365, but you can buy it separately if you would like to. Yammer is like a corporate version of Facebook. So it enables social interaction, social learning on a corporate level. So it's sort of safer, more secure than Facebook, a Facebook kind of private group, and people can interact on it in exactly the same way. Final slide on technology, productivity, because of course we need people to be productive. We need them to be accountable. We'll come on and talk about that when we look at work in a moment. So, you know, this software is very much project software. Trello, Freedcamp, both great sort of project management software. They allow you to set up to-do lists, to set people goals, measures. People come on and they say that, you know, they tick the box to say they've completed that piece of work. Of the two of them, I prefer Trello and I use Trello, but I believe Freedcamp is free software, whereas Trello, you have to pay for a number of the different options and plugins on it. The final piece of software on this slide is a piece of software that I particularly love, particularly when I work with other freelancers. It's something called Clockify, and it is literally like a clocking in, clocking out system. So it enables people to clock in and say, yes, James, this morning I did 30 minutes on that piece of work that you asked me to do, and then I'm going to do another hour on it at this time. And they clock in when they start the work, and they clock out when they finish it, and it just enables that timekeeping to be done. So moving swiftly on to our second poll. So if I could get this second poll, thank you very much, Maria. So this poll is asking you, what are you most looking forward to post-lockdown? So we've got hugging your friends and family, eating a meal at your favorite restaurant, going on holiday abroad, socializing with friends, or attending a religious gathering. So please select one of those, whichever choice best fits you, and then as soon as we can, we'll have a look at the results. Thank you very much for that, Maria. So overwhelmingly, 45% hugging your friends and family. Absolutely, we miss that social interaction, that human touch. Enjoying a meal at your favorite restaurant. We miss that experience, shared experience with others, and going on holiday abroad. We miss our exploring and our adventure side of us. We've also got socializing and attending a religious gathering. So the top three, funnily enough, MSN recently ran a poll, and MSN readers came up with the top three as their three things they most look forward to post-lockdown. So if I clear that away and I move to our slides where we talk about social, because remember what we said before, even though throughout the 2010s people had the opportunity to work from home, they still missed the social interaction. They would pay to be in an office. And that's because when you're at home, you lack the human connection. People want to hug people. We just found that out from our poll. So people want the human connection, maybe not so much hugging people all the time, because that would be a bit strange, but we miss that connection with other people and being able to have those social interactions. So some of the things you need to do, keep it as human as you possibly can. Make sure you're aware that, you know, this is a highly stressful time for people. You know, we're not gone through something like this ever in our lifetimes. So recognize the emotional strain people are going through at the moment. Use video to bring people together. I use video, so I have regular video check-ins with team members. We also have our socials. So on a Friday afternoon, 3 p.m., we have a social gathering where we all just get together over Zoom and just catch up. What's everyone's plans for the weekends? Those kind of conversations you would have within the office. Regular team meetings. So I would, if any of you have ever worked in a contact center environment, we would have daily huddles. I would encourage you to do something similar from home, just a daily check-in point for your entire team, no longer than 10 minutes, just to check in and say, hi, how's everyone doing today? Has everyone got what they need for today? What's everyone working on? Does anyone need any help with things? And the coffee machine conversations, because don't forget, so much learning and interaction happens just at the coffee machine. So encourage your team members to just have a quick conversation, a quick Zoom call, a quick Skype call with someone else, and have that coffee machine conversation and catch up with each other. So the work itself, let's have a look at this slide. So as I say, this slide is all about the actual work itself, and trust is absolutely vital when you have a team that is working from home. Rob said in his talk that one of the leadership characteristics that people most want is for their leaders to be trustworthy. But I would actually go as far as saying that trust is a two-way thing. And if you want them to trust you, you in turn need to trust them. And trust is so important. We have to trust them to do the work. We have to enable collaboration, because people cannot work on their own when they're working at home. Two heads are better than one. We need to provide the platforms and opportunities for them to collaborate with their colleagues. We need to be flexible with people, particularly at the moment with everyone working from home. Certainly in my own home situation, both my wife and I are working, and we have our 3 children to homeschool. So we're having to be very flexible. And, you know, I've kind of set up a bit of a daily routine where I get up, I do some work, we then do some homeschooling, I then do some calls, then there's lunchtime all together as a family, then we do some more, then we might go for a family walk. So allow your worker, your team to be flexible in their work. It doesn't need to be done between the hours of 9 and 5. So long as it gets done. Some people might be early birds, some people might be night owls. Allow them that flexibility of work. People want to be self-directed. So again, it comes back to this flexibility. Don't micromanage. Allow them to direct themselves to work when they get the time, so long as it gets done. Hold them accountable, make sure the work gets done. And the final one on here is be clear about what needs to get done. For those of you who have come on my courses at LMC, you'll know I'm a big fan of the fact that communication happens in there are 2 steps to good communication. The first step is delivering your message clearly. The second step is that message being understood. And that second step is so vital right now. It's not just about you communicating it, you've got to make sure that they've understood it and they are clear about what they need to do. So my final slide, or before I go to my final slide, guys, this saying is so true at this moment in time and with any remote working team. You must trust someone until they have been proven untrustworthy. So trust someone until they have been proven untrustworthy. So the 6 actions for you to take away today. The first one is make sure you invest in technology. Remember, 40%, that learning curve that IBM researched, it takes time for people to get used to new technology. So invest in the right technology, invest in the technology that's going to help people to work effectively from home. Bring people together. Remember, they were paying to work in an office. They want to be together. So find ways, use video technology to bring your team together, to still have those social interactions, those coffee machine conversations, those face-to-face meetings, socials, all that kind of stuff. Create structure. So I try and create some structure in my day and encourage your team to create structure. So understand, you know, when is going to be a good time for them to be on a call with you? When do they need to be doing stuff with their kids, either homeschooling or, you know, feeding their children, etc., etc. So try and help your team members to create a structure and a routine to their day. Make it human. Don't lose the human touch. People need humanity right now in this crisis. So, you know, recognize the emotions, recognize the stress and the strain that people are under. 5th one, define boundaries. So remember I said, you know, people will need to take time out to do stuff with their kids, with their family, to get shopping, because I don't know about where you are, but here in the UK, it takes sort of double the amount of time just to get your shopping in at the moment. So define some boundaries. You know, if they need time out to spend with their kids at that time, then find out when that time is and don't call them and don't text them during that time. But equally define your own boundaries. So if you need time out to relax, to de-stress from your day, if you need time out for your kids, make sure you say to your team, okay, I'm available between these hours, but then during these 2 hours here, I need time out. So please don't contact me. Contact my my delegated manager instead. And then I'm available again at this point. Final point on this slide, point 6, make sure you are clear. And not just that you deliver that message clearly, but that actually they've clearly understood the message. So can they repeat back to you, what is their task? What are they to focus on today? What are the goals? So what does good look like? And how are you going to measure that success? So that they are very clear on exactly what your expectations of them are while they are working from home. So those are my 6 actions to take away from these 20 minutes now. I'd like to say a big thank you to you for your attention and for listening today and for joining us. And I'm going to hand back over to Adina. And I hope to see you all at the London Management Centre at some point in the near future. Over to you, Adina.
Thank you very much, James. And thank you, Rob. This was very insightful and informative session. I very much enjoyed listening to both of you. And I think you brought some things that even we discuss this on a daily basis, some of the things that we actually haven't thought about. And I'm sure it's very similar to all the attendees that have joined us here today. Like we promised, we've offered our attendees to pose questions and ask our panelists for answers. We've also invited you to send us in your questions prior to this webinar, which we have some of those. And I will just choose a few and ask our panelists to give you further answers to that. So, Rob, if I start with you, there was a question which talked about recently on television and in communication, we very often hear from specialists that they talk about the approach time over quality. Now, you talked about developing strategy to deal with crisis. So in your opinion, what would you say? What's the necessary approach? Is it a time or a quality? Do we have to follow the crisis plan step by step if we are in that situation?
Really interesting question, Adina. And if you recall, the one keyword I put up in one of my slides was that term flexibility. We have to be really flexible about the strategy. We have to be really flexible because of things that are happening within that time frame. So I would say, yes, we've got to follow the strategy, but once we get the new coming information, and I always talk about steepled factors, you know, some people might know it as pest or pestlay, but those external factors are what are impacting on our current strategy. The whole point for me is about being flexible and having options in our decision-making process, having other alternative options ready just in case something new comes in. And that's why I'm saying about listening to respective countries' information coming out from government about what's the new information, whether that's about whether we can isolate, self-isolate, whether that's about new medication, whatever it might be, will impact how we do our business organizationally. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question clearly, because I think it's depends would be my answer, but we have to be mindful of those steepled factors, be flexible as a top team, as a strategic team, discuss our options and have a plan B, have a plan C, and have a plan D ready, depending on how those external factors impact on our current strategy.
Thank you very much for that, Rob. You're absolutely right. And I think that is the key of having that flexibility, as you mentioned. James, if I can bring you in now, and I have a question for you that was sent in by one of our attendees.
Okay.
And you talked about communication with remote teams and how do you manage them? Now, the question that has come through that how do you deal with the communication in a crisis situation when you have to, what we would say, take a temperature and acknowledge a pink elephant in the room, basically dealing with difficult conversations with your remote team? So that's one of the questions that came out in different formats from our attendees, and I think it will be very useful if you can just give them some insight into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a problem at all, Adina. So, yeah, I think, you know, when dealing with any human team and human beings, there are always going to be difficult conversations because people are humans. You know, we're not robots. We're not perfect. So there will always need to be difficult conversations. I think even more than in a face-to-face situation, when you're working remotely, you have to be honest with people. You have to be transparent. And you have to have those conversations with them. I would always do them on a one-on-one basis, so not in front of the entire team, so make sure that you're not humiliating them or anything like that. In a one-on-one scenario, over a video call like this so you can see them, but I would definitely be transparent and give them that feedback and have those difficult conversations about their work performance, etc. All those things still need to happen even though they're working from home. We have to hold them accountable. So, yes,
Right.
do it, but be transparent.
Thank you very much for that, James. And while I still have you on, there is a question from one of our attendees on the live question answer, which the question is, in light of how many people are now working from home, do you think that organizations will see this as a viable option for staff after the crisis are over?
I absolutely do. Yeah, I think that, as we said, necessity is the mother of innovation, and we're certainly finding companies are innovating with this crisis, and we're seeing just how much we can get done from home and how productive people can be in their home environments. I was actually just speaking to someone yesterday who is a very senior director in an organization, and he was saying, I usually have a 2-hour commute into the office in the morning, 2-hour commute coming home. What is the point post lockdown? Why am I going to spend 4 hours of my day sitting in traffic just to go into the office when I can be just as effective from home? Now, I think what probably is going to happen is that when lockdown finishes, we're all going to jump back to the office because we're missing that human interaction and we want to see everyone and all that kind of stuff. So we'll probably go right back to the other way to begin with, and then we'll slowly start coming backwards and going, actually, why am I coming into the office when I could be doing this from home, and slowly start to work more and more from home. And we'll probably balance out where people, certainly the person I was speaking to yesterday was saying, do you know what, I can work from home 2 or 3 days a week, and the days that I need to go to the office, you know, would it matter if I arrived at 11 o'clock and worked from 11 till 7 rather than 9 to 5? It wouldn't make any difference, and I'd have a much shorter commute. So I absolutely think this is going to change how we work moving forwards. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, James. I think that's absolutely right. In London, very often we talk about that commute, how difficult and tedious it can be because it does take a very long time. But I'm sure it's like that everywhere in the world. There's also a question which can be applicable to both of you, as a matter of fact. So if you would like to give your insight to that. And our attendees would like to know, what is the long-term impact of coronavirus crisis on the organizations? So from a strategic point of view or a people point of view, if Rob, can just give us your take on that first?
Yeah, my view is, Adina, I think when we go back to the new normality, whatever that is for each organization, we're going to have to review the whole thing around strategy. We're going to have to review the whole thing around policy. We're going to have to review every one of our processes because of the impact that COVID-19 has had, and that long-term longevity impact of it as well. Just using HR as an example, job descriptions will probably have to change, because if people are going to work from home more, you've got the health and safety side of stuff that's happening at home. Lots of health and safety checks haven't been carried out. We just didn't have the time. One day we were in the office, the next day we were all told to work from home. I think there's health and safety stuff that needs to be panned out in terms of working from home. There's the whole thing about, what does your job description now say? What are your job hours? Because we can't go back to the strict as 9 to 5 because of the impact that looking after children, looking after family, whatever it might be. As long as we're getting the outcome, It doesn't matter what hours we are doing. That's my view, and I know that's the view of the Chartered Management Institute as well. It's really about achieving the outcome. So we need to address things like policy, process, and strategy. And I would say that's almost every single organisation that's been affected across the world with COVID-19.
Right. James.
So yeah, I think the long-term impact of COVID-19 is one, we're going to change the way we work. And as Rob said, we're going to be working from home a lot more. My own personal belief is, well, my own personal hope, I should say, is that we become more human as a result of this. We realize, I think we become slightly invincible in our mentality prior to COVID-19. And we actually recognize that we are all human. We're not invincible. And actually, the emotional stress and strain, people become more aware of people's emotional states as a result of COVID-19 and become more human and compassionate and caring would be my hope.
Thank you very much. We only have a little bit of time left. I would like to use just a short period as well. There is a question here which is quite interesting. Asked, basically it's to you both, but one of you can answer it. Is you both mentioned trustworthiness is a key component in both presentations. How do you ensure this trait is being carried out by the managers?
Oh, that is a very, very good question, and I think the main people to ask would be the staff themselves through employee surveys and 360-degree feedback. I think if you ask an individual, we'll always say I'm a trustworthy person. No one's going to say I'm not a trustworthy person. I think what's the saying? It's in the eye of the beholder. It's the actual people themselves who are being managed by that person. Ask them, do they believe their manager to be trustworthy in an anonymous type 360-degree feedback employee survey? Oh, you're on mute, Adina.
Yeah, just while you're unmuting yourself, Adina, but I'd go along with what James is saying here. I use a tool called Johari's Window, and Johari's Window is one of those ones that kind of gets the blind spots. If you don't know if you're not trustworthy, if you do a Johari's Window type exercise with your staff, very similar to 360, you'll get feedback. I think it's more about introducing feedback as a culture change, perhaps, in some organizations that maybe don't have it. I don't mean give me feedback. I don't mean using that phrase, but it just becomes natural that we give feedback to each other, no matter where we are in the hierarchy chain of command, and that we make sure that we consistently give feedback and we learn as to how trustworthy we are based on that feedback model.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. And thanks for pointing out I was muted. It would be the first time I feel myself. But once again, thank you both for giving us such a wonderful insight into these very important topics that we are all facing these days, and many of our attendees would like to know so much more from you. But I would like to close this webinar and invite everybody that has been attending today with us to look up the rest of the series of COVID-19 webinars that we will be actually offering. It's on our website. You have all the details on the emails that we have sent over to you and a confirmation email. I'll just mention it. It's www.lmcuk.com, and you will find further information about not just webinars that we are offering, but also online training courses, as well as our training courses that LMC offers throughout the year for international clients, pretty much from every corner of the world. Thank you very much once again, and we look forward to seeing you. The next one you may consider will be held on 7th of May, and that will be psychological safety in building resilience for organization and people, and that will be delivered by our expert in psychology and behavior, Salma Shah. I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you very much. And don't forget, the recording of this webinar will be posted on our website, and you will be able to download and watch over it again. Thank you.